Schultz. It's my hardball. Now on Countdown.
The Rachel Maddow Show starts
tonight on MSNBC.
What they have to do is get past the Sunday talk shows. They need to go out, some real conservatives, young guys, relatively young guys like Mike Pence or Tom Price or Jeff Sessions or Jim DeMint. Those are the guys they need to get outside the Beltway, stop talking about George Bush, start talking about how to repair this country because Barack Obama is transforming it into France.
Wow, that was the editor of Human Events, Jed Babin, right here on Morning Joe, talking about the state of the Republican Party, something our next guest, who he mentions, has been focusing on. With us now, the chairman of the House Republican Study Committee and member of the House Financial Services Committee, Congressman Tom Price. Congressman, thank you very much for being with us this morning.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
So is Jed right? And if so, how does the Republican Party do that? How do they move into the future and stop looking back and I guess brush away the affiliation that is negative with the doings of the Bush administration?
Well, I think we need to, as many folks have suggested, return to core principles, the core fundamental principles of fiscal responsibility, national security, American social values that the vast majority of the American people believe, and then communicate those in a positive, upbeat, and optimistic way all across this land, not within the echo chamber of Washington, but all across this land.
I've heard this before, but how does it get done in the climate that we're in? I mean, we have, I think, a president that is posing a challenge to the Republicans because he is finding a way to sort of lean both ways as he works out what his policies are.
He is, but he's oftentimes talking in conservative or actually Republican talk.
Yes.
But then the action tends not to follow that discussion. The American people will recognize that over a period of time if that continues. But our challenge is to get truly out across the land.
Yeah.
We get stuck in Washington. We get stuck in Washington speak, and we get stuck in that echo chamber and think that that's where the world exists only. But all across this wonderful country, there are people who are concerned about their nation, want to return to some real fundamental roots and fundamental principles. That's the chord we've got to reach. And if we do that, the Republican Party will be just fine.
I wonder what's standing in the way of that. Mike Barnacle?
Hey, Congressman, I don't want to sound like a jerk here, but we just had Congressman Clyburn on from his home district. We have you on. You're from Atlanta, Georgia. You guys are both home. The country has enormous problems. How come we can't get Congress to work 5 full days a week, Monday through Friday?
Well, that's a great question. In fact, that's what we ought to be doing in addressing the real challenges that we face. The schedule in Congress is set by the majority party, and we follow their lead because they're the ones that set the schedule. But we ought to be addressing the significant challenges, whether it's health care or whether it's the energy challenges that we have. Actually balancing the budget, that would be a novel thought, I know. But we ought to be doing those things back when we get back to Washington. I want to thank you for sleuthing out the fact that Jim Clyburn has a copy of Conscience of a Conservative on his desk. I'm going to go in his office and make certain that's the case.
Take a picture. Pat Buchanan.
I'll do so.
Congressman, the big items that Barack Obama are getting through are his budget, $1.8 trillion deficit, 13% of GDP. He's going to get health care. It looks like maybe take it through reconciliation. They got a cap and trade that's going to go through. Is there anything the Republican Party, the fiscal conservatives Republican Party, can do to stop him at all?
Well, absolutely. And in fact, I think that cap and trade has probably been derailed to a significant degree. As chairman of the Republican Study Committee, I've challenged our folks with coming up with those positive, optimistic, upbeat, forward-thinking solutions. We put an energy bill on the floor last week, or introduced an energy bill, H.R. 2300, that talks about an all-you-can-create energy plan, which is innovation and production and conservation, creating jobs all across this land. What the American people want to see, I believe, is a contrast between the two visions that we have for the nation. If we're able to successfully put forward that vision, the vision of entrepreneurship and ownership society and all the kinds of things that the American people truly embrace, then in fact we will see that the American people recognize that there is an alternative, and the future of the Republican Party will be bright, and they won't be able to get all the things done that the other side desires.
But Congressman, you're saying a lot of things, but you know the fact is the actions really haven't been there. I mean, what are you going to do specifically to, for example, make people have confidence in the public markets? I mean, here we are seeing the letter of the law ignored when it comes to so many situations. You know, obviously, we all know that we need the public markets to finance this enormous debt that we're talking about for this country. But why would anyone trust in the financial markets, knowing that at any time the rules can be changed? Look what happened in the Chrysler situation, where the senior bondholders were supposed to be the senior holders there, and actually they have a minority of the company with the unions owning 55%. Why would an investor go side by side with the government on the PPIP plan, knowing that the administration may rip up the rules and start anew? We need to have trust in the financial markets. How are you going to get that back?
You're right. Well, I think you're making the point exactly, and that's what the American people are concerned about right now, because they see the government stepping in so many different ways in which that we're not used to. We don't have that experience in America. And what the American people want, I believe, is to get back to the fundamental principles that brought us to be the greatest nation in the history of the world.
So what are you going to do?
And what that means is trust in the financial markets. Appropriate regulatory reform. We need to have regulatory reform. There's no doubt about it. But the challenges that we are confronted with right now aren't a result of deregulation. They're a result of a lack of appropriate regulation. And that's the kind of message that we in the Republican Party and in the Republican Study Committee will be getting out across this land.
How about some accountability? Because let's face it, yeah, we have a regulatory structure in place. It's not that we need more regulation. We just need people to do their jobs. Somebody failed at the switch who was actually supposed to be overseeing the financial services industry.
No, you're absolutely right, and
I haven't heard any accountability.
It's kind of a all hands off. It was an all hands off. They didn't recognize mortgage-backed securities or those kinds of things, and so the regulatory mechanism in Washington said, well, that's not my job. And that's where the reform needs to come into place, to allow a system that is nimble and flexible and can provide appropriate regulation. But the American people don't want the government takeover of either health care or the financial markets or anything. They want to know that their children and their grandchildren are going to be able to benefit from the wonderful vision and beauty that is America. It's fundamental American principles that they want to be embraced and put back in place.
Is there anybody in Washington who has actually ever worked in business? Is there anybody in the administration who you can name who's actually ever worked in business?
You know, it's a great question, because I asked that of my staff. I said, which members of the cabinet have ever been an employer, have ever signed the front side of a paycheck? There are only two of them that I'm aware of. One is Robert Gates at Defense, and the other is Salazar at Interior. He was a farmer.
Wait,
everybody else,
no
their
one in
whole
Treasury or in the
experience,
economics part of the White House. Okay, got it.
Their whole experience has been either in the academia or in the public sector, and that's one of the problems, is that they don't have their gut sense isn't that they can trust the private sector, that they can trust the American people. That's truly the vision that we have, and that is that we trust the American people, and if the rules are fair, then things will work out just fine. And that's where we need to get. We need to get away from the government intervening in absolutely every aspect of our life.
Joe?
Congressman Joe Scarborough here. Do you believe that the Republican Party is big enough to hold both Rush Limbaugh and Colin Powell?
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. If we are concentrating on fundamental principles, those principles of economic freedom and economic liberty and opportunity, national security, and adhering to the social values that have made America great, then that's a party that's broad enough for the vast majority of the American people.
Congressman, do you disagree with Rush Limbaugh that Colin Powell should leave the Republican Party?
Look, it's not up to Rush Limbaugh to decide who ought to be in the Republican Party. There are all sorts of wonderful folks across this land who hold dear the fundamental principles that we as Republicans hold dear.
Congressman, you disagree with that viewpoint that Colin Powell should not be a Republican. You want him to be a Republican.
I'm an arms-open guy. I want folks all across this land who believe in the fundamental American principles that we embrace to join us and move forward in a positive way, as opposed to the kind of exclusive division that we so often see in Washington. It's so counterproductive.
Congressman, do you believe that Rush Limbaugh or Dick Cheney are better, quote, I'm just using terms that we hear every day on TV and radio, that they are somehow better Republicans than Colin Powell?
No, goodness.
God bless you,
this division.
God bless you.
This division that we seem to be embracing across this land has just got to go away. Look, we are all Americans, and we need to fight for fundamental principles, and that's what will carry the day.
Congressman, spread that message, if you will. It's great hearing you talk and say that, because I say if the Republican Party was big enough to hold Rush Limbaugh and Colin Powell in the 1980s when Reagan was president, it better be that big now, or else the party's in big trouble. Speaking of big trouble,
thanks, Joe.
Behind you can't see it, but behind you is a picture of Atlanta, my hometown where I was born. But it was Atlanta after Sherman marched through and burned the city to the ground. There appears to be a huge smokestack coming up over your left shoulder. Not sure about when that was taken, but anyway,
that's a clean coal-fired plant.
All right, hey, Congressman, thanks for being with us. I greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
You know, and Mika,
take care.
I'm not knocking Rush Limbaugh or Dick Cheney or anybody else, but you know,